The next thing I've noticed is the scale. Guys, the scale of the speaker is enormous. Huge, tall, deep, wide. But it ties back to what I said earlier. That scale is only apparent when you have the right amplification. If you do not have the right amplification, the speaker shrinks. Does that make sense? The speaker becomes almost like the soundstage of a DAW, Sasha. And that has to do 1000% with the amplification you're using. Don't assume that this speaker is going to sound big if your amplification is this tiny. It just doesn't happen. The scale only happens when, one, of course, the song you're playing is recorded with a huge soundstage, and two, if you have the amplification behind it to give you these results. The placement of this speaker. As big as this speaker is, and it is very large, guys, it's a huge speaker. I can tell you that I didn't struggle with the speaker. I thought I was going to struggle a little more, but I feel like I struggle a lot more with the Alex. Does that make sense? Here's why. I feel like with the Alex, the bass was there, but I was always trying to chase more bass. I was always trying to get more enormous punch, depth, that bass that hits you in the gut. I couldn't get that out of the Alex, no matter what I tried. And don't get me wrong, there was bass. I'm not saying it was lean sounding, but I found myself just day in, day out, moving the speaker left to right, towards the back wall, towards the front wall, different amplifiers, different speaker cables, and I just couldn't get it to thump hard. When I put the XLF, all those problems were completely erased. No problem. I threw it in the room, just the right amplification, and the bass it makes your brain rattle. Like, it is crazy, the bass you get with the speaker, no matter where you're placed. Of course, you can place them in the wrong spot and get terrible bass, but for the most part, the speaker has been positioned right where the Alex was. And guys, bass is incredible. It's just amazing the kind of bass I get here. And so that, in my opinion, makes the speaker a lot easier to place because the bass is so apparent that you don't have to create these trade-offs that sometimes you have to do with smaller drivers where you don't have enough bass, so our tendency is to go up against the wall or closer to the wall to compensate for less bass. But what that does is that kills your soundstage, right? As you get closer to the wall, the soundstage begins to smear a little bit. You don't really have those compromises with the XLF. Honestly, it has been probably one of the easiest speakers for me to place in my room. The next one has to do with the size of the room, actually. So I don't think this speaker needs a massive room. Honestly, my room is 17 by 22 with about 8.5 foot tall ceilings, and I think it works quite well. Now, the only concern I would have with this speaker is if you have a ceiling that's maybe shorter than 8 foot ceiling, that's when I'd be a little concerned because that rear mounted tweeter might be too close to that ceiling, and that might negate a lot of the effects of that rear mounted tweeter. Okay, so I wouldn't use this speaker on a very short ceiling. But when it comes to the size of the room, remember, all the time alignment that you have here allows you to compensate. You can sit as close as 8 feet from the speaker, and it's going to blow your mind no matter what. So all the adjustments that you have with the bottom port, plus all the adjustments of the time alignment, it makes the speaker capable to work in many different listening rooms. You shouldn't be worried. In my opinion, you should not be worried about the speaker not working for you because you're concerned that it may be too big. Now, visually speaking, yes, the speaker is very big. Can't take that away from the speaker. But this speaker actually would work in more spaces than the Martin Logan Neolith that I had here in the past. That speaker requires, in my opinion, more space than the XLF. It just does because of the nature and the design and the panel. Okay, so keep that in mind. When it comes to the DNA of the speaker, I don't find this speaker bright at all. I don't think it's a bright sounding speaker. I think this speaker is very smooth and relaxed sounding. If you connect electronics that are bright, it's going to get bright. If you connect anything that's warm, it's going to get warm. So I would say it's right on the neutral side, maybe, just maybe a little bit on the left side of neutral, maybe a little bit, a tad warm. That's what I find the speaker to be, but I don't find it on the bright side at all. I never really think that this speaker will get bright for no reason. You really have to have the electronics to make the speaker very bright. Which simply oftentimes is not the case with beryllium tweeters. As you know, beryllium tweeters tend to be very detailed, but let's keep it real, a little bit on the bright side. We know. What's the coolest thing? The last thing I'm going to talk about is, what is the coolest thing that I really have found with this speaker? And I really had to think about this, guys. I wanted to give you something. And I think it is, without a doubt, transparency, guys. I believe, I'm not 100% sure yet, but it's getting there, that this could be the most transparent speaker I've ever owned in my room. Now, I know you guys are going to come back and say, well, how is that possible? You had X, Y, and Z, and you had this, and you had that. Let me tell you why, guys. Not only because of the size. Think about it. You got two 15-inch woofers. You got two 13-inch woofers as well. If you play something that has no bass, meaning an amplifier, it's easy to detect immediately that there's bass missing. Because you see these 15-inch woofers, you know they have to be capable of more bass, right? So it's easy to find out when your amps are anemic, when they don't have bass control, right? So when it comes to the low-end punch, hands down, the transparency, it's so easy to spot, okay? Now, moving on to the high frequencies. Two tweeters, one rear mounted, one forward mounted. As you know, the same thing happened to me just a few days ago when I replaced the stock Ethernet cable on the back of my MSB DAC with a Shunyata Omega. As you can see right now, this is a $3,500 Ethernet cable. All I did, guys, was swap that cable, nothing else. And I felt like the high frequencies became something completely different. The high frequencies became more organized. They became more uniform. It's almost like I felt like somebody went in and massaged them and evened them out. Completely evened them out. That's what I feel when I made that Ethernet cable swap. And I couldn't believe the change. Like, I was extremely blown away because in the past, having on other Ethernet cables, I heard changes. But it was not something that I can almost quantify or give you clear definitions of what happened to the sound. I just know a change occurred in the past with other speakers. With this one, I can zoom in and tell you what changed. Does that make sense? Sometimes I realize now with other speakers in the past, when I change something, whatever that may be, a power cord or a cable, a speaker cable, a preamplifier, I remember that I would detect the tonality, the change, right? Okay, the change of sound. Okay, something changed. I know it happened. I think this changed. I think that changed. Maybe this aspect changed. Let me try again. Let me try again. Shut the door behind you. Shut up. Turn off the AC. I can't pick up the changes. I need to focus and figure out what changed. So you don't have to do that with the XLF. Because with the XLF, you're able to tell exactly what changed. Again, if it's the bass, you'll know because of the massive woofers. You'll know the bass got leaner immediately. You don't even have to think about it or analyze it or play it again. You just know what happened. And that's due to the fact that the speaker is so big and so extended that when something shrinks, you're able to tell, yeah, this speaker should do. You're able to tell, you're able to completely feel the drastic shift in the presentation and zoom in on what changed. That's one of the biggest and most special things about this XLF. And I'm telling you right now, having owned a lot of different speaker brands, every day that I listen to it, I'm always surprised by what I hear. I'm always really, really impressed by it, just like I was impressed with other speakers that I've owned, of course. But there is something about this XLF that keeps me thinking, where do I go from here? Right? All the time. I think about this all the time. Where do I go from an XLF that doesn't cost a mortgage on top? That's something that honestly, guys, I can't answer. Like, there is no way that I can go from here to another speaker without spending a massive amount of money, huge money. And at the end of the day, is it really going to be that much better than this speaker? And I have to question that. I really, really have to question that. The fact that this speaker is discontinued, the fact that this speaker was Wilson's flagship, to me that's just two strong points and more of a reason to question my own desire at times to change the speaker. Because I've heard a lot of speakers, guys, not just in my room, but out and about, and I don't think I've heard a speaker that can do some of the great things that this speaker can do. Is it perfect? Guys, it's not perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect speaker. I've said this before. No, it's not. It's huge. It's heavy. It's a pain to deal with. It's very difficult to move around the room because if you have a carpet, it literally sinks into the carpet. So it makes it hard. It shifts your carpet all over the place. It's happened to me, okay? But the great thing about it is that once you place it, you don't have to move it again. You're done. And last but not least, 1000%, this is a better speaker than the Wilson Audio Alex I had. My personal opinion, it is a much better speaker than the Alex. I am not even going to just argue that point. My opinion, having owned both models, yes, the XLF is superior to the former Alex. I do not know anything about the new Alex V. I have not really spent time with it. So all I can say is, we're looking back at all the speakers from Wilson Audio that I've owned. The Wilson Audio XLF is by far the best speaker that I have ever owned from Wilson Audio, and potentially from any other brand. Again, don't quote me on that. I am just saying at a high level it might be, but I'm not 100% sure. It is just an incredible value knowing that now they are discontinued. So it's very hard to find a deal on them because of the fact that you're not going to see them in the used market as often as you would see an Alex, for instance, right? Because they didn't really make a lot of Wilson Audio XLFs. The production was not a big production on the speaker. So that means there's going to be less Wilson Audio XLFs on the used market. But let me tell you, if you can get your hands on one, guys, given the depreciation factor and everything else, you're going to have a hard time justifying the replacement of the speaker. You just will have a very difficult time. Thank you, guys. That's all I got for today. Stay tuned. I will soon be unveiling my new monos and preamplifier. I think you guys will not want to miss that. But before that, I will be shooting a couple of videos now. I'm just waiting on some cables, guys. And hopefully we get this ball rolling. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. Stay tuned for more.